Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the dramatic 24-year unraveling of East Pakistan. It's a profound historical story, one that fundamentally redrew the map of South Asia. Now, when Pakistan was carved out of British India back in 1947, it was born under a highly unusual premise. And honestly, what happened over the next 2.5 decades provides some incredible insights into nationalism, identity, and the very foundation of how modern states actually work.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the uneasy union of the two nations, move into the language movement, discuss the economic exploitation, the stolen electoral mandate, the ensuing War of Independence, and finally wrap up with why the struggle absolutely still matters today. Let's get into it.
Section 1. Two Wings, One Uneasy Nation. The Geographical Oddity of 1947.
1,000 miles. Just think about that for a second. That is the vast expanse of Indian territory that physically separated the two halves of this newly formed country, East Pakistan and West Pakistan. Imagine trying to run a single, unified country where your two halves are as geographically far apart as London and Rome. They shared a religion, sure, but virtually nothing else.
And this geographic divide instantly created a severe, almost impossible imbalance of power. The West, which was home to Punjabis, Pashtuns, Sindhis, and an Urdu-speaking minority, essentially held all the reins. We're talking absolute dominance over the military, the civil service, and the political leadership. Meanwhile, the East, ethnically Bengali and speaking Bangla, found themselves completely marginalized from power. And the kicker? They actually made up the majority of the nation's total population.
Section 2. The Language Movement. Suppressing an Identity.
Fast forward to 1948. Pakistan's founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, visited Dhaka and delivered a very firm message. Quote, Urdu would be the only official language of Pakistan. Now, for the Bengali-speaking majority over in East Pakistan, imposing a language spoken by such a tiny fraction of the overall population didn't just feel like a policy shift, it felt like a direct assault on their identity. The West Pakistani leadership basically viewed Bangla with suspicion, and they were attempting to force a single, uniform cultural identity onto two highly distinct, very different regions. This top-down policy quickly bred some really tragic resistance. By 1952, the pushback had crystallized into what's known as the Bhasha Andolan, or the language movement. When students at Dhaka University actually defied a ban on public meetings on February 21st, police opened fire, killing several demonstrators. It was a huge turning point. It took 4 more years of relentless, intense agitation before Pakistan finally backed down and recognized both Bengali and Urdu as national languages in 1956.
But the damage was absolutely done. Those deaths completely transformed a linguistic demand into a powerful, unshakable symbol of Bengali nationalism. Today, the sacrifice of those students is actually commemorated globally as International Mother Language Day, and historians widely view this very movement as the initial seed from which the eventual independence struggle grew.
Section 3. Economic Exploitation and Autonomy. The Internal Colony.
But it wasn't just about culture, right? Underneath that cultural friction lay some deep, systemic economic disparity. East Pakistan was functioning essentially as an internal colony. They were out there earning substantial foreign exchange through exports like jute, yet they were being totally starved of development spending. West Pakistan, on the other hand, was receiving the bulk of the investment. This led to a rapidly widening wealth gap, where the East generated the wealth, but the West reaped the benefits.
So what happens when you have that kind of prolonged economic exploitation? It leads directly to a political response. By the mid-1960s, Sheikh Mujibur of the Awami League presented the 6-point program. This became the ultimate rallying cry for Bengali nationalism, a very clear structured charter demanding genuine federalism to end what felt like internal colonial rule. These demands were sweeping, to say the least. They sought to leave Islamabad in charge of only 2 things: defense and foreign affairs. Literally everything else: taxation, currency accounts, foreign exchange, even maintaining a separate local militia, would rest with the federating units. For the West Pakistani establishment, this proposed level of autonomy wasn't just a negotiation. It was viewed as a direct threat to the state's integrity, and it actually led to Mujib's arrest.
Section 4. A Stolen Democratic Mandate. The 1970 Breaking Point. By 1970, the country was essentially a pressure cooker. First, you have the Agartala conspiracy case, which attempted to sideline Mujib but completely backfired, making him wildly popular instead. Then, the horrific Bola cyclone hit.
The central government's incredibly slow relief response seemed to confirm the East's absolute worst fears of neglect, fueling immense anger right as the historic 1970 general election arrived.
And the results of that election bring us to this landslide number, 167. Out of 169 seats allotted to East Pakistan, Mujib's Awami League won 167. Because East Pakistan had the larger population, this didn't just give them a regional win, it granted the Awami League an outright majority in the National Assembly. In a democracy, that gave them the absolute right to form the entire country's next government.
But, as history often goes, that transition of power never happened. President Yahya Khan, under heavy pressure from West Pakistani political leader Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, refused to honor the clear electoral mandate. Fearing the 6 points would entirely dismantle their central control, they indefinitely delayed the assembly's inauguration, and in doing so, they effectively shut the door on any sort of peaceful political solution.
Section 5. War in Independence. The Violent Rupture.
Things escalated horribly quickly. On the night of March 25, 1971, the Pakistan Army launched Operation Searchlight. This was a severe military crackdown targeting civilians, intellectuals, and activists in Dhaka. The very next day, Bangladesh formally declared independence. The ensuing violence triggered a massive humanitarian crisis, sending some 10 million refugees fleeing across the border into neighboring India. By December 3rd, the conflict exploded into an interstate war when Pakistan launched preemptive airstrikes on India, concluding just 13 days later.
Now, a crucial element of this swift victory was the Mukti Bahini. This was a guerrilla resistance force where ordinary, everyday Bengali citizens took up arms alongside military defectors and paramilitaries. Trained and supported by India, they fought fiercely for their very survival and their liberation throughout those grueling 9 months.
90,000. Let's just pause to absorb that number. On December 16, 1971, around 90,000 Pakistani personnel surrendered in Dhaka, marking the formal creation of Bangladesh. It stands as one of the largest military surrenders since the Second World War.
Section 6. Why this struggle matters. Lessons in nation building.
So what are the big takeaways for political science here? Well, the birth of Bangladesh radically redrew the map of South Asia for sure. But it also proved definitively that shared religion alone is simply not enough to sustain a nation, not if a region feels culturally erased and economically exploited. Most importantly, it demonstrated that when a clear democratic mandate is suppressed, it can literally unmake a state. Language, dignity, and economic justice intersect directly in the making and breaking of nations.
Which brings us to a really provocative question drawn from our source material to leave you with. Given the vast physical distance and the deep cultural differences we've discussed, was the partition of Pakistan inevitable right from 1947? Or, if the West Pakistani establishment had accepted a genuine federal arrangement based on the 6 points, could the country have stayed united? It's a fascinating question about the delicate fragility of modern states. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring these incredible moments in history.